I mean, this is a guy who, yeah, he read Huxley, but he also read Heidegger. Better than food, man. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Better Than Food Book Reviews. I'm your host, Clifford Lee Sargent. Great to see you as always. Hope you're doing well. Get that coffee. Today is Dune by the American author Frank Herbert, published in 1965. What a beautiful copy. This was a gift from my good friend Seneca. Look, you got the sandworms on the back there. You've got the hooded Fremin on the side. Beautiful, beautiful book. I think it's one of those Barnes & Noble editions. Really, really kind of him. Thank you so much, Seneca. I'm usually not a science fiction guy, save for J.G. Ballard or William Gibson. But I trust Seneca, and my friend Corey also said I have to read this. So, for the record, I have not seen Denis Villeneuve's new Dune, nor the David Lynch Dune, nor Jodorowsky's Dune. Okay, I watched some clips from the new Villeneuve one on YouTube, but that's it. That's while I was reading it. Dune is widely considered one of the greatest science fiction novels ever written. Herbert was a journalist and was once sent to the dunes near the Oregon coast, near a town called Florence, to gather material for an article. He ended up becoming very intrigued by the environment. Apparently that landscape inspired him to write the book, and it's an incredible place. That's actually where I was for the intro shot of this video, in Florence, Oregon. I went there last summer. And that exact place was actually the inspiration for Dune. And it's easy to see why. I mean, it's really an incredible environment. If you ever have the chance to go out there, I highly, highly recommend it. It's really unlike anywhere else. It's right next to the ocean. And it's just this collection of sprawling dunes with patches of grass and a few trees around, but I mean, it really is. I mean, people take four-wheelers out there and stuff. Actually, I went four-wheeling out there when I was a kid, and it was crazy. I remember that distinctly. It's cool. You can just drive over the little bridge there in Florence, and you just park in the parking lot, and you can just walk out there onto the side of this giant dune and pretend that you're dying of thirst in the desert. So, if you're in the area, cheap entertainment. Dune is an exceptionally unique book. As Herbert himself says in this interview I've linked below, he writes science fiction for people who don't read science fiction. And I'm definitely in that camp. So going into it, I was like, I don't know. I mean, could go either way. But it came highly recommended, so I finally got to it. This is a science fiction story from an environmentalist who was into philosophy, psychology, ecology, theology, mysticism, and politics. Herbert worked as a journalist and then as a speechwriter for a senator, and also had an interest in psilocybin, like magic mushrooms, which also happened to grow on the Oregon coast. Not that I'd know. Dune is a colossal narrative and world constructed of these interests and many more. While it's certainly science or speculative fiction, whatever you want to call it, it imagines this future and what have you, and this kind of ethereal, fantastical universe, civilization thing. It's got enough of man versus nature, right? Like boots on the ground, tactile quality, to satisfy any would-be outdoorsman or woman. I've been fortunate enough to have been able to spend a brief amount of time in North Africa and see the Sahara, and I have a lot of admiration for Berber culture, which the Fremen, this group in the book, reminded me of in their stoicism and knowledge of the desert. I think the actual inspiration for the Fremen was from a book called The Sabers of Paradise by Leslie Blanch, which is about 19th century Turkic tribes fighting off the invading Russians. Sounds like an excellent read as far as history. So Herbert was really inspired by that. This empire, expanding and taking over these places, these remote places, and people going like, yeah, fuck that. So the religion of Dune is a true melting pot of religious ideas, scriptures, and philosophies, whether Islamic, Christian, or Buddhist. The result is fascinating. I mean, it's like, he imagines thousands of years of religious revolutions and combinations and all of these permutations, right? These renewals and these mixtures and combinations. Yet in the future, it's more essential to all of the characters in the book than ever. Just about all the characters in the book, I think. I don't know if there's a secular, I guess the Harkonnens might be secular, but I'm not exactly sure. Herbert said his Islamic friends were confused as to why the book was called science fiction, as they felt it was a religious commentary, which is very interesting. The fact that Herbert makes religion so essential to these future generations really says something. It certainly wasn't done away with by reason or rationality. If anything, it's far more essential than it is to us nowadays. So it takes place in the future, far, far into the future, in an era filled with conflict between a whole bunch of warring powers, right? Not unlike what we're gearing up for right now. In the book, it's a difficult time. And speaking of, if you find that you're having a difficult time in life, as we all are to some degree with current events, I'd like to suggest you check out the sponsor of today's video, BetterHelp. In times like these, self-care is essential. There's absolutely no shame in prioritizing your mental health, and BetterHelp, that is BetterHelp with a P, can help you with that. Tons of people out there are experiencing loneliness and depression and struggles of all kinds, whether it's financial, mental, or social, all of the above. It's not an easy time out there, and I don't foresee it getting better for a while, unfortunately. Whether it's current events or bad relationships or just general confusion about the direction your life is taking, or this sense, however great or small, of losing control, right? Whatever it is, I think it's easy these days to feel distracted or lost or unfocused. So sure, exercise can help, and eating right can help, reading can help, at least helps me, and therapy can help. So I'd like to tell you about BetterHelp, the sponsor of today's video. BetterHelp is the world's largest therapy service, and it's 100% online. With BetterHelp, you can tap into a network of over 25,000 licensed and experienced therapists who can help you on a wide range of issues. To get started, you just answer a few questions about your preferences and needs in therapy. That way, BetterHelp can match you with the right therapist from their network. Then you can talk to your therapist whenever you feel comfortable, whether it's by text, chat, phone, or video call. You can message your therapist at any time and schedule live sessions when it's convenient for you. If your therapist isn't the right fit, for any reason, you can change your therapist at no additional charge. With BetterHelp, you get the same professionalism and quality you'd expect from in-office therapy, but with a therapist who is custom-picked for you, more scheduling flexibility, and at a more affordable price. So please check them out and get 10% off your first month by going to betterhelp.com/BTF, and I've also linked them in the description below. Thanks a bunch. Essentially, Dune is the classic messianic hero narrative, wherein the chosen one, right, exiled and previously thought dead, turns up alive, reborn, and, after proving himself worthy of ruling, leads his people to victory. The classic tale of the underdog against tyrannical oppression. That's just the archetypal structure. There's plenty to make the tale unique. So Dune takes place in the future in an interplanetary feudal society. The emperor rules all, and under him, this might be an oversimplification, but for the most part, emperor rules all, and under him, various houses vie for power. House Atreides is one of them. This is the story of Paul Atreides, this young boy born into royalty, the young son of the Duke Leto Atreides, and his regal concubine Jessica, whom the Duke tragically never married for political reasons, but nevertheless loves. Jessica is part of this, what would you call it, a covenant, a group, a cult? It's like this group of witches called the Bene Gesserit. They're kind of superhuman. They're all female. Through their bloodline mating, breeding plan, their goal was to produce a male Bene Gesserit. This kind of next step in the psychic evolution of humans. Something the world has never seen before. And that could potentially be Paul. That's where we find him in the beginning, taking this test with this Reverend Mother of the Bene Gesserit, which is incredibly painful, to see if he is special, basically. Paul has been trained in all manner of fighting tactics and various rigorous ordeals in order to see, you know, what he can do. It's just basically trial after trial after trial for this kid. He's superhuman, but he's more than superhuman, it seems. Potentially. He makes the witches nervous, right? He's got this, you know. He wasn't supposed to be. Jessica, I believe his mother, actually has the ability to choose whether or not she has a child, whether she allows her body to conceive. And she was supposed to have a daughter, but something in her said, nah, I'm gonna have a son. So she did. So from the beginning, it's suspected that he may even possess the nature of a messiah, right? That he's exhibiting some hints that he may possess the qualities of something more. He's this kind of special result of selective breeding within the royal bloodline. So, right off the bat, very interesting setup. So we meet this family, the Atreides, right as they're beginning to embark on a life-altering adventure to take over and rule the planet Arrakis, otherwise known as Dune, which was previously ruled by the Harkonnens, the enemies of the Atreides. I had to look up the pronunciation of all these words, of course. You know, it's not the... And I was surprised by all of them. I think I was pronouncing all of them wrong, except Atreides. I think I got that one right. The enemies of the Atreides, led by the Baron Vladimir Harkonnen, the big, fat, gross bad guy, played by Stellan Skarsgård in the new one. Well, I think it was... That seems like it's going to be a good choice. Arrakis is the most inhospitable planet imaginable. It's almost entirely composed of desert. It has a monocrop economy, basically, which is this stuff melange, aka spice. The spice, right? You've probably heard this word in association with Dune. Spice is a substance, this narcotic, a drug, which among other things has life-extending qualities. It only grows on Dune. Arrakis is the source. You cannot get it anywhere else. It's extremely expensive, for good reason. It is one of the most valuable substances in the universe, though highly addictive. Not in light amounts, but in heavier amounts, yeah. And there are some side effects for heavy users. For instance, their eyes turn blue. Like the whites of their eyes, everything. It all turns blue. The whole eye. It's like heroin if it didn't destroy your muscle mass and kill you, but instead gave you life-extending benefits and allowed you, potentially if you had the right chemistry, to see in the future and other trippy cool shit, right? Unfortunately, if you stop, you quit cold turkey, you die. Yeah, it's a problem. It doesn't help that it goes so well when it's blended with, beer, coffee, made into a liquor. Spiced beer, spiced coffee, spiced liquor. Supposedly, it tastes like cinnamon. Also, gathering the spice is extremely dangerous, as it grows in the desert environments, populated by giant sandworms that can sense you walking on sand, if you don't know how to do it properly. If you're just too rhythmic, right? They'll hear that from fucking miles away, and off they come. And you are, as they say, worm food. They can grow up to 400 meters in length. They devour entire machines with ease. There's a great scene in the book with that. It's probably one of the best scenes. It's also just so surreal and bizarre. And unfortunately, though this has been going on for a while, there's a whole industry around this. Whenever the spice gathering operation occurs, they always come. They never fail. They have to lift the machines off the sand after someone on watch spots the worm coming. It's ridiculous. It's a very strange setup. But spice is the most important substance on the planet, save for one crucial element that all of us need as humans, which is almost nowhere to be found on Arrakis: water. I've never been so thirsty reading a book. So anyways, this taking over the governance of Dune. The Duke Leto suspects it's a trap, but I don't think he really has much of a say in the matter. He's kind of been commanded to do this. But he thinks it's a trap. And spoiler alert, it is. And he's assassinated after the Harkonnens join with the Emperor to overthrow the House Atreides because they're beginning to represent a threat to the Emperor's power. Also, the sandstorms on Arrakis, they tear through metal. They're enormous, giant fucking storms. Apocalyptic. Unsurvivable, if that's a word. You just have to avoid them. They're massive. So corruption within the government, so to speak, leads to the murder of Paul's father. They're betrayed by one of the members of the household. So Paul and his mother escape into a sandstorm and are presumed dead, because these sandstorms on Arrakis, yet another thing you have to contend with on the planet, are merciless, apocalyptic. They tear everything apart. It's brutal. They're just, So they don't turn up, and they're presumed dead by the Harkonnens, but miraculously they survive, and are found by the native inhabitants of Arrakis, the Fremin, a hardened, deeply religious warrior culture that intimately know the desert. And these people are tough. I mean, quite tough. They write poetry to knives, right? They have these things called crysknives. They're these sacred knives. They're made from the teeth of the worms. They also, I won't tell you, I won't spoil it for you. They're better at navigating the planet than anybody else, of course, so they can do things that others can't, and they know things about the worms that others don't, so it's fun. Again, water is the most important element to humans on the planet. So much so that all the Fremen wear still suits, right? Think still like water still, like this recycling of water. So these suits, it's a full body suit complete with nose plugs that recycles your body's moisture. They have still suits and still tents, all this stuff. All this advanced technology for recycling your body's water. Everything depends on water. If you don't have water, you're dead. Almost immediately. It's more valuable than any other resource or currency. It is the currency. So Paul and his mother eventually join the tribe and lead the Fremen, who have been under sadistic Harkonnen rule. They hate them, like the House Atreides, against not only the Harkonnens, but the Emperor himself, with whom they're in cahoots. As my wife said, it's kind of like Star Wars, without the Muppets. The Emperor has his own breed of soldier called the Sardaukar. They're like this Spartan culture that, in their culture of training soldiers, it's like something like 6 out of 13 of them are dead before they're 11. And it's just this merciless Spartan kind of upbringing. They're just bred to kill, right? And so that's the Emperor's soldiers, who were part of the attack on the Atreides family, though they were wearing Harkonnen uniforms. They were trying to cover it up, right? But they clearly had those advanced fighting capabilities, so it was obviously Sardaukar. So people could spot that there was a corruption, something was going on, right? Anyways, the Fremen, the inhabitants of Arrakis, are able to stand up. They can beat the Sardaukar. They're that good. They're tougher than them, right? The Sardaukar, it's been said, have kind of, they're kind of riding on their reputation for a while. They started off as just like completely badass, and then they kind of rode on their reputation for a while. It kind of weakened, so like went downhill a little bit, but still they can put up a good fight. So anyways, this is nerdy to the point I don't think I've experienced in another review. So we're going to move on here. Obviously I enjoyed the book. It's equal parts Brave New World, Blade Runner, Star Wars, and Mad Max. Yeah, so with like the spice, it's similar to Brave New World with the Soma, right? The drink that just makes you forget everything. And then with the Fremen, there are similarities with the Pueblo culture on the reservation in New Mexico. As Cormac McCarthy puts it, books are made out of books. I wouldn't at all be surprised if Herbert read and enjoyed Huxley, because it seems like a direct, not copying, but homage for sure. I mean, there are definitely elements, but you take things from things and things, But the construction of the book is fascinating. I mean, he put a lot of time and effort, obviously, into this thing. It's quite dense in its detail. Not in the plot necessarily. It's not the simplest plot, but it's definitely not the most complex plot. It's a very straightforward read, but the way in which he reveals things is smart. It's not all laid out right in front of you in a linear fashion. There are mysteries throughout the book. Things gradually come into view in a way that is clever, in an unusual fashion. Maybe especially for sci-fi novels, He doesn't give it to you right away. And his influences are, as obviously I've said already, they're quite varied. I mean, this is a guy who, yeah, he read Huxley, but he also read Heidegger, and Jung and Freud and other philosophers, I'm sure, it's deceptively simple on the surface, right? Each chapter begins with a quote from a religious text, which is mysterious. We have no idea really what it is. We find out in the end, but it's called the Sayings of Muad'Dib, which we discover is the name taken by Paul when he joins the desert tribe of the Fremen. So, a royal outcast along with his mother, he descends into hell to lead the Fremen to glory. That's the story, right? He becomes entirely what he is, what he was born to be. And it's interesting, past the short-term victory, over their oppressors, the Fremen's entire goal, and they've taken steps to accomplish it, is to transform Arrakis into an inhabitable planet with water and plants everywhere. Unimaginable to some, but possible as it turns out. They've patiently laid plans for many generations to come. They, as in the current, and none of the next several generations will see it, but one day it could happen. It's an admirable and ambitious goal. There are many environmental underlying themes to the novel. I found the ecological construction of Herbert's world fascinating. Not only is the spice directly related to the worms, but the worms, referred to the Fremen as makers, also expel a considerable amount of oxygen, substituting for plant life, which of course is non-existent on Arrakis. The world building is so extensive that he's even included, in the end, the terminology of the Imperium, included at the end of the book along with several appendices on the ecology and religion of Dune. And the definitions in that terminology, in a very enjoyable manner, further contextualize and illuminate various parts of the story, right? So in a way, you're still reading the narrative even after it's over. It was clever. That was good. For example, something I thought was very interesting. We learned that, in fact, long ago, from the date of the present story, under the term, in the terminology, Butlerian Jihad, at some time in history, there was a war against computers and man-made machines. There was a war against technology, basically. Its chief commandment in the Jihad remains in the OC Bible, and the OC Bible it's called the Orange Catholic Bible. It's like an aggregation of the remnants and permutations of our modern religions. Its chief commandment remains in the OC Bible as, "Thou shalt not make a machine in the likeness of a human mind." Very interesting to think about with ChatGPT and all this shit going on. Very interesting indeed. Is there going to be a day when we've had enough and we decide to war against the machines? I could see just as well, even if it isn't like Terminator, the man versus the machines, or like The Matrix with Neo and what have you, I could just see a significant size of mankind saying, "No, don't want it. burn it down. Like, get rid of the AI. Get rid of the AI. We can see where this is going. Not interested. I might be on that side. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. So what did I think? Well, sure, there's a goofy drama and stoicism and sentimentality that goes along with any sci-fi endeavor. There's the kind of ridiculous shallowness to the characters, the two-dimensional hollowness, the over-stylized mechanics of the world building and all the shiny bells and whistles, you know. But this was a great fucking book. It's a great book. It's a great read. The writing isn't gonna blow you away, but it definitely doesn't get bogged down. He never overstays his welcome. He keeps things moving. The chapters are nice and you know, considerate to the reader in their length. The style moves, right? It has a rhythm, it has life. It's never clinical or tedious in its description of fascinating things. It's never too concerned with technology or science. And it's always got its eye trained on the mystical, conceptual, philosophical element of the narrative. The most interesting thing, at least to me. It's a fine read. I thought it was quite good. Not too complex, but certainly not too simple. I think it could be read and enjoyed on a surface level, just for like, you know, an adventure story. But also if you chose to reread it, you could certainly do a deep dive and explore the iceberg just below the surface, so to speak, which seems pretty large, I'd wager. He put a lot of effort into this thing. There's a lot there. And there are plenty of great little details thrown in here and there, right? The Fremen spit as a gesture of respect, sacrificing moisture, right? Because, you know, water is so precious. Everything is based around water. You know, it's not the obnoxiously idealized science fiction fantasy world. It's got that deep, dark, dirty, mysterious nature which is inherent to existence, right? That mystery, that kind of grit, that, you know, there's a lot of philosophical inquiry. It's the kind of the cycle of the hero as he turns into somebody kind of almost jaded, you know? There's a very interesting line in that book near the end, which is, kindness is the beginning of cruelty. I think Herbert's concerned overall with cycles, ecological cycles, religious cycles, technological cycles, environmental cycles, the cycles of humanity, the cycles of good and evil, the cycles of, if you want to call them that. What strikes me about the character Paul is his complete and almost total disinterest in ever asking himself why he does the things he does. At least it seemed to me. There's really no question for him, ever. He's almost robotic, right? A pure archetype, kind of cursed to his role, in a way. Almost inhuman. Sure, there's a whole bunch of calculation and training and superior forms of intelligence, even foresight to a powerful degree into the future. Actually, one of the main things that guides him throughout the story, which is very interesting, is that he sees in the future this jihad carried out by the Fremen, which after they become power hungry or bloodthirsty or whatever, this religious holy war, basically, you know. He's guided by, I mean, you know, I suppose you could make the argument, because he's guided by a vision that he's trying to avoid, right? He's guided by a vision of the future that he can see. He can't see everything. It's all kind of cloudy. It's all kind of muddled in some areas. So he can see some things, right? But other things are hazy. And I think, at least as I understand it, they change depending on what actions he takes. But anyways, you know, he can see whether or not he's on track, so to speak. But there's a specific event that he is trying to take action against, right? He's afraid of it getting to that point. But he realizes he can't avoid it, right? Spoiler, sorry. But philosophy, the questioning, the why, right? The why never enters the picture in these characters, which is interesting. I guess, you know, asking why is a luxury, it seems to suggest. They have a goal: survive and reproduce and transform Arrakis. I'd like to read a science fiction novel wherein everyone is a complete neurotic and totally unsure of themselves, and often looks like a complete moron going through life, doing their thing, like dealing with the unbelievable, vast new technology and what have you. You know, like real life. Or maybe that's just me. So yeah, that's what I typically dislike about science fiction. It's such a depiction of caricatures and paper-thin archetypes that it only serves as a moral message delivery system, which I've had enough of for 17 lifetimes, frankly. But, of course, you know, as far as being one of those stories that is light and fluffy and stupid, it's not at all. It's quite dark, quite philosophical, mystical, adequately paced, and generally interesting, certainly unique, innovative. I've not read another book like it. I might have read books that copied from it. Star Wars plagiarized the shit out of this book. And there's this kind of beautiful fatalism to the ending, which is almost film noir, right? Now that I think about it. Maybe not. It just struck me that way. I don't know. I'd have to think about that before confirming. At least many would call it fatalism, but I just call it the truth about the world in which we inhabit. That which is pure will be corrupted. That which is corrupted may become pure. What lives will die. What is young will grow old, from day to night and back again and again and again. It's all inevitable. Pain, suffering, death, just as much as beauty, pleasure, and happiness. It is all part and parcel of the same cycle. And there is nothing in that cycle that can be restrained or cheated or avoided or escaped, right? All shall be. It's kind of what I got from the book. That's a beautiful truth displayed in a science fiction fantasy story. What a great ending. In spite of all of its silly tropes, what a fantastic wrap-up. I'm actually going to read you one of those passages from the beginning of a chapter. Again, thanks Seneca for this book. Man, this thing is gorgeous. Okay. So this is from Collected Sayings of Muad'Dib by the Princess Irulan from the beginning of this chapter. Greatness is a transitory experience. It is never consistent. It depends in part upon the myth-making imagination of humankind. The person who experiences greatness must have a feeling for the myth he is in. He must reflect what is projected upon him, and he must have a strong sense of the sardonic. This is what uncouples him from belief in his own pretensions. The sardonic is all that permits him to move within himself. Without this quality, even occasional greatness will destroy man. It's very interesting. Sets the tone, you know. And Paul has this whole kind of arc, this whole transition, you know, from young, precocious, male Bene Gesserit to ruler, and then kind of jaded ruler. Like, there are some things that he starts doing that seem inescapable, but I don't know if callous is the right word, but darker. There's this interesting transition. I'm still working through it. I'm still thinking about it. It's kind of the classic, you know, the weight of power and responsibility, what that turns you into, right? What comes with that, and the unfeeling kind of the coldness that arrives with that role, you know. So I love that. That was great, and really, you know, I don't want to spoil too much, but that's kind of where we end in the book, which is great because it really just makes you, you know, I don't want a happy ending in a, you know, like a happy ending would be a total cop-out for this story, and that felt so much more powerful, right? Yeah, so I really enjoyed that. I felt that Herbert didn't cop out, right? He really, you know, he really got, you know, like, great things happen and bad guys are defeated and whatever, as you could guess, but it's not that simple. There's a twist. There's even a familial twist in the bloodline, you know, like Star Wars. Like, it's not the same, but you'll see. You know, and there's an epic battle with Fade Rotha, the Harkonnen not Baron, the Baron-to-be, you know, as portrayed by Sting in the David Lynch film. I can't wait for that. Kyle MacLachlan and Sting battling with knives. Anyways, lots to look forward to. We'll see how it goes. Better than food. Definitely worth your time. So you should read it. Personally, I'd say everyone ought to give this a shot because you never know. Like, I'd say, like, you know, read this if you're really into science fiction. Well, no, I'd say read this if you're not into science fiction, you know? But also read it if you're into science fiction. It's not just for science fiction fans. It's something totally unto itself. It's literary science fiction. That doesn't sound good either. But yeah, I recommend everybody try Dune. You may, like I was, find yourself surprised. And if you ever get a chance in Oregon, I'm serious. Those dunes are a hell of a place. If you ever get to go see the Sahara, though, that's that's a life-changing experience. For me, at least. Yeah. And it's thick, but I mean, it goes fast, so if you were really into it, you could finish it in a week, totally, maybe a few days. It's not particularly dense. Like I said, it moves, right? It felt like a journey, though, that's for sure. So what did I dislike? Well, yeah, the basic plot is very simple. You could guess most of it, I suppose, the major plot points. But there are instances of real literary transcendence, it seems. Though I do feel like it's more of a novel to read when you're in your late teens or early 20s. It's a fine, atmospheric, lighter read in an impressively constructed world. But I really don't have an interest in reading all the sequels, of which there are plenty, unfortunately. The fact that he just kept going was, for me, a disappointment. I mean, write the book. Be done. I mean, I get it. It's amazing, but don't, especially if you don't want it to be pigeonholed as merely sci-fi, right? It's a very science fiction-y thing to do, is you just keep going in the world and you just keep, ugh. But that's just me. It beat the shit out of Star Wars, which plagiarized the hell out of this thing. Coffee time. For those of you who are new, thank you very much for stopping by. I take the names of all the names of the patrons on Patreon and place them in this mason jar. And for each review, I pull out a name, and whoever's name is drawn, I send them a hard copy of the book I'm reviewing, plus a bag of coffee, roasted by yours truly. And the coffee is delicious. If you would like to get in on that, you can go to patreon.com/booksarbetternfood and donate $5 or more per video, or click on the link below, and I sincerely appreciate it. Thank you. If you donate $1 or more on Patreon, you'll get access to the Patron-Only Reviews, the Discord channel, plus a Better Than Friday newsletter I send out every Friday, which is just a list of 5 different things that I'm interested in at any given time. Could be books in the pipeline, music, films, articles, changes week to week. If you think we have similar taste, I think you'll get a lot of value out of that. I post a lot of music on there. So I sometimes talk about music in the reviews. If you like music, you like the kind of music I like, you're probably going to find something on there that you like, especially because there's like, we're edging on like 200 now. We're in like the 170s. Maybe the next one is like 180, I think. I've been doing this for a few years now. So anyways, tons of stuff in the catalog, so to speak, to work through if you want new stuff, new books or new movies or whatever. And that's all I've got to say about that. So the copy of Dune I will be sending out as a paperback. I plan to keep this one on the shelf because it was a gift and, so. But yeah, the paperback is also cool, so I'm sure you'll enjoy. Thank you very much to all the patrons, and best of luck. Okay, here we go. Michael F. Thank you very much, Michael. Really appreciate it. You're going to receive Dune by Frank Herbert, plus a bag of delicious coffee, and I hope you love both. Thank you so much. Please subscribe if you have not already. Like half of you have not, so I'd appreciate it if you would. All right, thank you. And hit the thumbs up, of course, if you enjoy this. And always remember, bring a book wherever you go. All right, great to see you as always. Take care of yourselves. Have a good night. Talk to you soon. Ciao.